ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुर्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. By His divine grace, we receive Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada. Chapter 1, text 36. I won't read it in English, you can just read it in Russian. Papameva shrayad asman hatvaitan atatayanaha tasman ha vayam hantum dhatarashran sabandhavan swajanam hikatam hatva sukhina syamamadhava. Yeah, please read the translation.
And the Buddha.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada points out in this purport, Arjuna herein manifests the quality of forgiveness, which later in Bhagavad-gita Lord Krishna will point out as being a godly quality. But as Srila Prabhupada also suggests in the purport, all such qualities have to be understood in perspective. That although the tendency to forgive is godly, it's not always godly to forgive. Sometimes you have to punish also. This idea of forgiveness and empathy is promoted by many spiritual, pseudo-spiritual or moralistic persons. In the New Age, you could say it's promoted, the quality of forgiveness. So it's, as Krishna says, it's a godly quality. And the fact that it's becoming more and more emphasized among certain people suggests that there is more and more need to forgive others amid the cruelty which so many people experience in their lives all over the world. Recently there was some news feature about Rwanda, where a country in southern Africa, in which because it was the 20th anniversary of a genocide that had taken place there, and it was discussing how some people had learned to forgive persons who had killed their brothers and husbands, because they have to get on with life. They're living in the same village and they have to cooperate with each other. And another feature of the modern age is the common tendency to blame others. In everyone's life, things go wrong. Everyone has the tendency in this material world to want to be Ishvaroham Maham Bhogi, the controller and the enjoyer. And it doesn't happen because we're not the controllers and we're not the enjoyers. And even in the lives of people who are big controllers and enjoyers of this world, such as the big politicians, or here in Russia, the oligarchs, the things go wrong in their life also. You may be earning $1 billion a minute, but that won't stop the virus attacking you and you're getting cold and flu and fever. Even if you have the best doctors in Russia as your personal doctors, they can't stop you getting sick. And because people are more sinful in Kali Yuga, more things tend to go wrong. When we say things that go wrong, it means they've gone wrong in our plan for enjoying and controlling. But because we don't want to admit that actually I'm wrong because how can I be wrong?
Nope.
We don't want to think that, well, it's a reaction to my mistakes in the past. Then we tend to blame others. There's a saying in English that the workman blames his tools. If he's, say, a carpenter and he makes a chair and then someone sits on it for the first time and it collapses, and he says, oh, it's because my tools are not proper. So there's a widespread ethos of blame. People don't want to take responsibility when things go wrong. The whole world is wrong, because if something's wrong in my life, it means the whole world is wrong. It's not me that's wrong. It's always someone else's fault. So in this ethos of blame, the quality of forgiveness can be considered the antidote. Another thing is that people expect so much. Here in Russia, in some ways, people in the Soviet times were more content. There was no position to attain and no riches to attain, and so people were just satisfied with whatever they had. But the consumer society says, hey, buy this, buy that, get something else, do some business, or get more money and buy more things and make yourself a great person. You can be great. You are great. You just have to manifest the inner Titan. So people have all these high hopes, but most people are just ordinary, and they never become like the great persons that they aspire to be. It's quite common to see boys and even men walking around with, they're wearing the football shirt with the name of a great football player on, as if to imagine that they themselves are that great football player, but they're not. And in India it's cricket players. I have nothing to do with David Beckham. You may have heard the name. But I came to know that such a person exists by seeing so many people walking around wearing a shirt with his name on it. I don't know. Have you heard of him here? It's all what's so special about him? That his ability to kick a ball more expertly than others. So people they want to be like that. Famous, wealthy, but most people, their life is humdrum.
No,
It's just daily routine. No paparazzi chasing them. So they may feel some resentment. And there's strong desire to be something great, but they're not great. So they're unfulfilled, and they feel resentment against others and against the world in general. Now we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Parikshit Maharaj, he came across Dharma the bull, who was standing on one leg only. And Parikshit asked the bull, who is to blame for this condition? But Dharma, in the form of a bull, did not put the blame on anyone. And I'll read a quote from Srila Prabhupada's purport to Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 18. First canto?
In Russian, you mean?
Yeah, there are different volumes. Take a look and see. Anyway, I'll read it. I'll just read the whole quote. Although the bull, or the personality of religion, and the cow, the personality of the earth, knew perfectly well that the personality of Kali was the direct cause of their suffering, still, as devotees of the Lord, they knew well also that without the sanction of the Lord, no one could inflict trouble upon them. According to the Padma Purana, our present trouble is due to the fructifying of seedling sins. But even those seedling sins also gradually fade away by execution of pure devotional service. Thus, even if the devotees see the mischief mongers, they do not accuse them for the sufferings inflicted. They take it for granted that the mischief monger is made to act by some indirect cause, and therefore they tolerate the sufferings, thinking them to be God-given in small doses, for otherwise the sufferings should have been greater. Srila Prabhupada sometimes cited Jesus Christ as being a great exemplar of the qualities of tolerance and forgiveness. Jesus is famously quoted as having said about his crucifiers, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Jesus is quoted as having said to Peter about forgiving people 70 times, 7 times. I saw in one brahmachari ashram in India some quotes from one of our ISKCON Swamis in this regard. One of the quotes is that the greatest power of those who are learned and realized is the power of love and the power of forgiveness. And another quote from the same Swami, "Love is everlasting forgiveness." Krishna also is ready to forgive. Krishna says, famously again, "Sarvadhaman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha." Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. However, Krishna does not offer unconditional forgiveness. It's conditional. Why is that? Because Krishna wants our love. Well, we may say that, real love is unconditional. Unconditional means that from Krishna's perspective, he wants something from us. But from our side, we don't demand anything from Krishna. Krishna's unconditional love for us is that he cares for every one of us. But Krishna, he makes a difference between what should be done and what should not be done. And although he's ready to accept everyone, he does make a distinction between those who act properly and those who don't. Samohang sarva bhuteshu name dveshosti na priyaha. Krishna says, I don't intrinsically favor or disfavor anyone. I'm equal to all. E bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. But those who approach me in devotion, Krishna says, I reciprocate with that. They are dear to Krishna. So Krishna doesn't manifest his love in the same way to those who don't surrender to him as he does to those who surrender to him. So real love is much more than simply forgiving. Forgiving is only a first installment. Then there is the matter of rectification. That means to rectify someone who is doing things wrong repeatedly. To forgive someone but not rectify them doesn't help them, but rather to do that encourages them in their wrong ways. So that means that forgiving people 70 times, 7 times, or love is everlasting forgiveness, it's a nice sentiment, but it may not actually really help the person. Here's a quote from a conversation of Srila Prabhupada in which he discusses forgiveness. This conversation was on May the 24th in 1974. I'm going to paraphrase a section of it. So Srila Prabhupada spoke about the confession program, which is there in the Roman Catholic Church, and I believe it may be in the Russian Orthodox Church also, is it? Mm. The idea of confession, in which you go and confess your sins to the priest. He, on behalf of God, forgives you. And you have to go every Saturday, as I remember as a child.
Sunday?
No, every Saturday. Sundays they're busy with the masses. But every Saturday you have to go and tell all your sins. and then he forgives them. So Srila Prabhupada said, suppose you or I am an offender. I ask your forgiveness. So you can forgive me once, twice, thrice, not more than that. No, that is not possible. That is a misconception. So, not 70 times 7. Everlasting forgiveness. Srila Prabhupada continuing. That is mentioned in the Bhagavad-gita. Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadhureva samantavyaha. This is translated as, even if one performs the most abominable actions, if one worships me wholeheartedly, such a person should be considered a sadhu. So Srila Prabhupada continues that this sudarachara means an offender, but that is not a willful offense. One person is accustomed to some bad habits, but he has taken to Krishna consciousness or God consciousness. But on account of a wrong habit, if he fails sometimes, that is excused. Forgiveness. That willfully committing sins and asking for forgiveness, that is not allowed. In common affairs, we do not see. I have got practical experience. In my household life, I was the proprietor of a big pharmacy. So my manager sold some morphia preparation to some unauthorized person. The sales inspector, means a government officer, noted it and made us as a criminal. The magistrate called me because I was the proprietor. My statement was given that I do not conduct the business directly. Yes, Srila Prabhupada gave the legal statement. Of course, I am responsible for my manager's fault, but I shall be very strict in future. You can forgive me, Srila Prabhupada said, continuing. Immediately I was forgiven. But next time, if I say like that, that is not forgiven. That is not possible. So this forgiveness is good for an accidental fault, but it cannot be continued. That is a wrong philosophy. Another quote that was printed and pasted up from the Swami I was talking about, defined love as completely giving oneself to the object of love, not defining that the proper object of love is Krishna. So which just gives it a completely mundane connotation. So Neo-Mayavadis, New Age people, they talk about forgiveness and love and compassion, and these are certainly this is certainly concepts that we, as aspiring devotees of Krishna, also qualities that we wish to develop. But all these qualities must be understood in relationship to Krishna, and according to the philosophy as given by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. As Srila Prabhupada says, that to go on continuing someone who does wrong things, Prabhupada said that is a wrong philosophy. Just to forgive but not to rectify, that is not the duty of the Kshatriya or the Guru or the parent. Srila Prabhupada told the story of a man who was raised by his aunt, who indulged him. She let him do whatever he liked. She thought that was being loving toward him. He fell into bad company. He became a serious criminal. And as a young man, he was caught by the state and sentenced to public execution. So as he was standing, about to be thrown down and impaled or hung or whatever method, he saw in the crowd of spectators, there's always a good crowd for a public execution, he saw in the crowd his aunt crying, and he asked, I have a last request. Please let my aunt come up. I have to say something to her. So he was tied up, came up, and he said, "Put your ear just next to my mouth." And she might have thought that he wanted to whisper into her ear something like, "I love you," or something like that. But he bit off her ear.
Bit of means
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Like,
It sounds unlikely, but that's how Prabhupada told the story. And he said to her, presumably she could hear at least through the other ear, that I did that because it's your fault that I'm here today. Because you failed to discipline me and rectify me. So this idea of endless forgiveness and empathy with all living beings, it's a nice idea, but it's an idea only. And we should be empathetic with all living beings. Should we have been empathetic with Hitler? Try and find the good side. Where's the good side of Hitler? Well, I don't know. I'm trying to find something. You could say, I don't know. I really, if you try, you can't find anything very good about it. And anyway, we may talk about forgiveness, but unless our heart is completely purified, we can't really forgive others. As long as we maintain to any degree the mentality that I am the controller and I am the enjoyer, then to some degree we're going to resent others who we perceive as being impediments to our being the controller and the enjoyer. So instead of having seminars on how to forgive and how the real seminar is how, on all these different qualities, the real seminar is how to purify our hearts. Srila Prabhupada did discuss these qualities, but mainly he discussed how to become purified by the process of devotional service. Because by becoming purified and becoming a pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, then automatically all good qualities develop. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavatya kinchana sarvaya gunais tattva samasate suraha harav abhaktasya kato mahan guna manoratena asti havato vahi. One who is a pure devotee of Krishna, all good qualities naturally manifest in him. But someone who's on the mental platform, not surrendered to Krishna, even if they appear to have good qualities, they cannot actually be good qualities. They may seemingly have some good quality, but then again they have some bad qualities. So, for instance, Mother Teresa was very dedicated to relieving the suffering of a tiny percentage of the human population of Calcutta. But every day she put into her belly the parts of the bodies of the non-human population of Calcutta. In other words, she was a meat eater. Her goodwill and compassion did not extend to the animals. So our first business is to purify the heart, to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and how to apply that practically so that we can come to the standard spoken of by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad-gita of advaishta sarvabhutanam, of not harboring any bad feeling toward any living being. Maitra karuna evacha, of being friendly and compassionate to all living beings. Nirmama, nirahankara, not thinking in terms of I, me and mine. All such qualities develop in yomad bhakta same priya, the one who is, one becomes dear to Krishna by being his devotee and develops all such qualities. So instead of trying to make some psychological adjustments on the mental platform, to try to develop qualities like forgiveness, Srila Prabhupada gave us a simple formula. Of course, the idea to, I'm just backtracking a bit here, the idea to develop qualities like forgiveness is very good. Forgiveness, empathy, compassion. But unless it's all on the platform of surrendering to Krishna, then it's all very bad. basic fault by which we have bad qualities is our envy of Krishna. To try to be good without surrendering to Krishna is something like the morality of thieves. That now we all jointly we stole all this money, now we should share it morally. So Srila Prabhupada's simple formula, it's Krishna's formula which Srila Prabhupada kind of gave us for developing all good qualities. He gave the process is to practice Krishna consciousness as given by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Principally chanting the holy names of Krishna. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. But we're also warned that such chanting can go on for millions of lifetimes without purification.
It may happen.
Yeah. Bahujanna kare jadi shravan kirtan tabutanapai Krishna pade premadan. One can be offensive and not for many lifetimes and not attain to love of Krishna, even though one goes on with superficial hearing and chanting. So Srila Prabhupada gave us the challenge to serve together within his mission. That's a great challenge, because most people come to this movement seeking shelter from the nastiness of the material world, and they have this utopian idea that everyone in this movement must be completely pure in all respects. But actually we all come to this movement with all our impurities. It's not that we just by putting on tilak all the impurities go away. Of course it doesn't mean we shouldn't put on tilak, but it's there's work to do in purifying the heart. Srila Prabhupada gave us a great formula for purification, and that is to work together within his mission to spread Krishna consciousness, bring this chanting and bring the Srila Prabhupada's books to every town and village in the world, to establish Varnashram communities. It's a great challenge. And if we are to fulfill these, then we have to work together. And that's a great challenge when we all have different backgrounds, different outlooks, different kinds of conditioning. If we're actually thinking to serve Srila Prabhupada, then we have to forgive others. Quoting Jesus again in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus taught to pray to God, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." Srila Prabhupada, he was able to spread this movement with great difficulty. Krishna is described as follows. He is described as.
Krishna appears. He is described, not he described.
Yeah, he is described. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samaschabhyati kascha drishyate. Parasya shakti vividhaiva shruyate swabhavati jnana balakriyacha. That he has no work to do. He's not obliged to do any work. No one equal to him or greater than him is to be seen. As the Supreme, he has various energies which are variously described and heard. He has his energies of knowledge, of strength, of action. One of his energies is his Ichha Shakti. Whatever he desires happens. But the jiva, although it may be empowered by Krishna, it's not that he just presses a button and everything works automatically. So it wasn't that Srila Prabhupada just sat down and chanted Hare Krishna and smiled at everyone and they all surrendered to him. He worked very hard and painstakingly to spread this movement. And forgiveness was a quality which he repeatedly manifested. He made the most unlikely people, he brought them into Krishna consciousness. Some of whom were very egoistic, many of whom were just mind all over the place. Means that lacking clarity and focus, mental clarity and focus. And Srila Prabhupada brought all these unlikely candidates together and engaged them in devotional service. And although he didn't go on speaking about forgiveness, he emphasized you have to work together to spread this mission. So he was able to bring people together to work together, although it was not easy, but he inspired them to do so for the higher cause of spreading Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, he didn't go on speaking about forgiveness, empathy, compassion. Sometimes he would talk about such things. He certainly exemplified all such good qualities, but he said that such qualities arise from Krishna consciousness, and that we should concentrate on Manmana Bhavamad Bhakto Madhyaji Namaskuru, thinking about Krishna, becoming his devotee, worshipping him, bowing down to him. It may be that that forgiveness is something that people talk about who have a lot to be forgiven about. People who tend to talk about it, it may be that they harp on about it again and again and again. Someone who's done a lot of things and hurt a lot of people in very deep ways, and the people don't feel inclined to forgive him, so he talks on and on about forgiveness. Just a person with a guilty consciousness, he may speak a lot about forgiveness. But actually a real Vaishnava never forgives others. Can you think why? He never feels that he feels I'm an offender. How can you offend me? I'm just a speck of dirt. He doesn't take offense. He thinks it's not possible to offend me because I deserve to be flogged in the streets. So to talk about forgiveness implies that egoism. Of course, the platform of a topmost devotee in which he just feels that I'm a great offender and everyone else is a pure devotee. That is not to be imitated. A Madhyamadikari, he has to preach, and he has to distinguish between those who are devotees and non-devotees, between what is right and what is wrong. And he aspires for the platform of a topmost devotee. He has to, Madhyamadikari preacher has to train others in what is right and what is wrong. So he has to express displeasure at things that are done wrong. But that's his duty, but for himself he feels that, or he should cultivate the sense of not thinking that, well, they shouldn't do anything wrong to me. Or even if one is, from the objective standpoint, abused, misused, exploited, badly treated, one may forgive. That's a godly quality. But when others are mistreated, then one shouldn't just think, oh well, okay, let's forgive them. And when the spiritual progress of others is impeded by the low consciousness of others, by mistreating devotees, then we shouldn't just forgive. For instance, if someone is, if someone's in a position of spiritual leadership, but he just exploits others in the name of being a spiritual leader, then that's not just something to be overlooked. Just like here, that I started off this lecture by reading from the Bhagavad-gita, chapter 1, in which Arjuna, he wanted just to forgive Duryodhana and his cohorts. But Krishna didn't agree to that. The time for forgiveness was over. Attempts to broker peace had been rejected by Duryodhana. So Arjuna, in the first chapter of Bhagavad-gita, it seems like Arjuna is a very great moralist. But the second chapter opens with Krishna roundly chastising Arjuna for his misplaced morality. So for the sake, for one's own sake, you can choose to forgive or not to. We are enjoined to forgive. But for the protection of basic moral principles of human society, Krishna said, you don't have a choice. You have to act, he said to Arjuna, as a kshatriya, to protect the citizens. Those leaders of this movement, they should think also that we don't just overlook all, if someone is misleading, we should rectify that as far as possible. And another reason why a devotee, even on, if one is not on the highest platform, he doesn't take offense. Because in a real friendship, there's no question of forgiveness. Yeah, in a real tight friendship, the question of forgiveness doesn't arise. Because it's understood that there's no intention to offend. She doesn't ask for forgiveness. It is understood that she's doing so out of love because of her great affection for the son. There's no intention to harm. Once Srila Prabhupada, after he'd been quite angry with some of his disciples, and later he said, well, sometimes I'm temperamental, and don't take it too badly if I'm very heavy with you. Devotees described it, they felt terrible that Prabhupada is apologizing to us. It's almost as if that makes the relation. Often we ask forgiveness to try to repair a relationship, but in such a close relationship where forgiveness is not expected, if one asks for forgiveness, it's almost like the relationship becomes more distant. Did you get that?
Yeah, of course.
Of course?
Of course means there's no problem with my understanding it.
Okay, there couldn't possibly be any problem in your understanding. All right, go on. But even among close friends, misunderstandings can arise. That's just the nature of this world. And then bad feeling is generated, whereas previously there was only good feeling. But if there's actual friendship, then it can be repaired. If there's communication, you don't just cut off and you can talk it out. Guhyamakyati pritchati. Two of the symptoms of loving exchange between devotees is that they're willing to reveal their minds and listen to what others say. So we hear a lot about tolerance and forgiveness, empathy,
sympathy,
seeing good in others, fostering good relationships, which are all good ideas. It's certainly better to talk about things than to encourage others to become chain killers. But unless all these qualities are on the solid basis of surrendering to Krishna, then they'll be superficial. Because the underlying template will be Ishvaroham aham bhogi. I want to enjoy the world. I want to control everything. And being unable to do so by brute force, I enter into some friendly relationships with others in which I can adjust my position from which to pursue the goal of being Ishvara, the controller, and Bhogi, the enjoyer. In other words, to have a culture of good qualities without the basis of Krishna consciousness, it breeds diplomacy. A culture of being polite, forgiving others, being empathetic, without the purification of heart, of Krishna Tekila Cheshta, doing everything for Krishna, will result in instead of gross shouting at others and beating them, it will result in a more subtle, diplomatic manner of people trying to get the most they can out of others.
То вместо того,
get the most out of them in the terms of exploiting them. We don't say what needs to be said. We don't clearly define what is right and wrong, because we want to show ourselves to be very polite and cultured and tolerant and forgiving. And often what we call humility is not really humility, it's just that someone avoids making others angry because he doesn't want people to be angry with him. Humility doesn't necessarily mean having a quiet, introverted personality. Only when I sneeze? God should only bless me when I sneeze. Anyway, yeah. Or it may be that we want to maintain good relationships because we're afraid that otherwise the person will be nasty toward us, or they'll curtail, if they have some power over us, or they'll treat us badly. And I've often seen that people, they behave very politely with their superiors and very nastily with their social inferiors. So this kind of politeness and good quality is actually not a good quality at all. It's self-serving. So much talk about good relationships. It's about how to juggle our false ego with those of others. But if we actually associate with devotees in the manner that we are enjoined to by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then there's no need to speak on and on and on and on about Vaishnava relations. Many times I suspect that when people talk about not making Vaishnava aparad, it means that they're doing something wrong and they're telling you, don't see what I'm doing wrong, just otherwise it's Vaishnava aparad. Instead of rectifying their faults, they tell other people, don't see them. Sometimes it can be a device for institutionally exploiting others. For instance, by saying, well, it's a great offense for a junior to see any fault in a senior. Which, to say that is not entirely wrong, but to use that as a device to go on behaving in a manner which is clearly inconsistent with that which a senior Vaishnava should manifest, it's a kind of cheating. So we have to apply the sharp sword of Shastric knowledge to see clearly what is right and what is wrong, to discriminate, that means, yeah. And in this way to excise discrepancies from the Vaishnava society.
Excise means eliminate.
Excise means just like to squeeze the pus out of a boil. That's an example of excising. Otherwise, in the name of forgiveness and empathy and good relationships in Vaishnava society, all of this can be used, maybe even unknowingly, as a social facade to perpetuate non-Vaishnava behavior. So although Krishna mentions forgiveness as a godly quality, and although Srila Prabhupada, commenting on Arjuna's willingness to forgive the Kauravas, he also mentioned that's the symptom of a Vaishnava, to be forgiving. But in this instance, Krishna pointed out that, in this circumstance, it is not at all fitting. Kutas tva kashmalamidam vishame samupastitam anarya drishtam asmadam akirti karamarjana. Krishna told Arjuna, he said, Arjuna was thinking, now I've come to a very purified state of consciousness. I don't want to fight. I'll forgive the others. And Krishna said, how have these impurities come upon you? At this moment, on this in this grave situation where you need to be fixed in what you're doing, at this time all these impurities have come. It's not at all befitting a person of high thought. It will not lead to elevation, nor will it be appreciated by godly person. So Krishna was willing to forgive Arjuna for Arjuna's wrong or misplaced manifestation of forgiveness. He was not willing to indulge Arjuna in his misplaced manifestation of forgiveness. In this cupboard are some tissues. If you look in there, please pass me the tissues. Yeah. So, Hare Krishna. There could be millions of questions about this. Where's soft tissues? Anyway. Yeah, any questions about this? I'm going to limit this discussion though, because it could go on and on and on. And I'll finish at 7:30. That's it. I'm just speaking on basic principles, but then people bring up specific situations. And we have to learn how to apply these basic principles in various situations. Yes, please.
I misunderstood probably something. Why cannot we ask forgiveness if we offend our close relatives?
No, we should ask forgiveness if we offend. That's true. That's a good point. But the real thing is not to offend. If we go on and on offending, that means we're not sincere in our asking for forgiveness. Sometimes devotees ask me, how can we get free from the effect of aparads? And I tell them that's not a good question. It means you're thinking of making aparads. Better you think how not to make aparads than think how to get free from them. Yeah, anything else?
I have a question. It was actually touched upon in my morning Bhagavatam class. Can we say that the difference upon this, regarding this text about Suduracha, about this, when one intentionally commits some and repeats, cannot be affected. Can we say that this is aparat, and one by chance, if one makes some mistakes by chance, that this is anart? So anart is something that that can be forgiven, and aparat cannot.
No.
So it's correct?
Yeah, ask it in Russian.
No.
Yeah, when there's anartha and we make no endeavor to become purified, and that becomes aparat. But it's also understood that certain anarthas may be deep-rooted and may take time to overcome. All right. Before we get into this, just one important point I should make is that we should be willing to forgive others, but we shouldn't be very willing to forgive ourselves. That, I'm doing things wrong, well, it's not so bad. On the other hand, we shouldn't get so much into blaming ourselves that we just become totally depressed and we can't go on happily with service. So what's the question? Was it heard? Everyone heard it. Okay. If Sudevi heard it, I guess everyone heard it. She's standing at the back. So
the question is that a disciple actually devotes all his body to the service of spiritual master, and it is said that the body of the disciple belongs to the spiritual master. But sometimes it's difficult to serve Krishna with this body, because they are not. This body and this mind is not meant for service of Krishna, although it's the inclination of the soul to serve him. So what should be when we have some health problems? For example, they say that you have to consider this. You should be too fanatic. Take care of your body, and to be able to serve your spiritual master and Krishna in the future. So what should be the balance? Should we really take care of the body, or fully just surrender and engage it?
That's really a different question off the topic, but it's just kind of expertly crafted. You say this body and mind is not meant for serving Krishna. Actually, it is. That's our misconception, that it's not. Yeah, health, I mean, just some common sense, that's all. Do what you can.
Делайте то, что вы
I
можете.
mean, there are some simple things that can be followed, which
Следуйте.
help to preserve the health so that we can better serve Krishna, and even then you're going to get sick because that's the nature of this world. So, one more question. Okay, then we'll finish that. Hare Krishna. Oh, there's one more question. No, I think I'll finish. Forgive me.
Простите, но
Forgive me for all my offenses.